Welcome to SEL in EDU.
where we discuss all things social and emotional in education.
I'm Krista.
And I'm Craig, and we are your host on this journey.
This podcast is created in partnership with Pennsylvania ASCD.
Oh, hello. Happy 2023 SEL and EDU family. It is Craig and Krista. We are here. Krista, how is your heart in the beginning of 2023?
You know what? I'm laughing because we already have a couple episodes that are going out, but this is our first recording of 2023. So by the time you all hear this, you'll be like, "Wait, what?" But my heart is huge and overflowing, and I am leaning into 2023. And so I'm looking forward to having some great connections, and yeah, I'm excited. How are you?
I am on this continued road to trying to be a better human being called Craig. And so like everybody is doing these wonderful New Year's resolutions that may have burned up since the start of the year. But I'm like, I'm gonna just continue to work to be a better human being. And like I feel like that is something that feels accessible to be in this ripe old age, and that's what I'm gonna hold on to.
I'm smiling because you're already freaking awesome. And
Oh.
I know this, everybody who knows you knows this. But I also know you are on this continual like refinement journey. And I love that about you. Uh,
Mm.
and so you mentioned about goals. And one of my goals is to actually start doing some more reading today, or the reading this year, I should say. And I'm so excited because we have an author on with us. And one of my very dear friends, Danny Tricarico, is here. He is known as the Zen teacher, and he has several books out. I am beyond excited and that I get to introduce him. And I told him, I'm like, I'm going to read your bio, but I'm going to tweak it just a little bit. Um, so Danny Tricarico has been a high school English teacher for over 30 years. And if y'all didn't know this, he is, wow, where did that y'all come from? I'm from Philly. We say you
Very
guys.
southern, very southern.
You guys, if you guys did not know this, he is from California. And I saw a picture of his school. He has one of those schools where the doors to the classroom goes right outside. And like Beverly Hills 90210. So Craig and I on the East Coast, like we don't have schools like that around here. So I love that he gets to have this view every day of what I see on television. So Danny is not only an amazing English teacher, he is the author of The Zen Teacher, creating focus, simplicity, and tranquility in the classroom, and Sanctuaries, self-care secrets for stressed out teachers. How timely is that with everything with COVID? In his spare time, he enjoys writing, listening to music. I know you like the records, so I'd love to talk about music. Reading mystery novels, watching movies, staring out of windows, going for cups of coffee on the weekends. And he loves sending memes to me and two other friends every day. Every time we find a meme that we think is hilarious, but we're not really sure if everybody else is going to find us hilarious, we send it to each other and we crack ourselves up. And Danny just recently had his newest book published, Right Here and Now, WRITE, Here and Now, the Mindful Writing Teacher's Guide to Finding the Zen in Their Pen. Welcome, Danny. We're so happy to have you here.
I am so thrilled to be here, Krista. Thank you. And what an amazing introduction that was. Thank you.
I'm excited to have you here. I was so thrilled. So I need people to know these are two of my favorite people, and I'm just excited that you have a chance to meet each other and to share your goodness with the world.
Thank you. But I'm going to forgive that you compared my school to 90210. But yeah, we just had a period in San Diego where it rained for 2 weeks straight, believe it or not. And I was grumbling because I was like, they designed the school with no overhangs. You're like always in the, when on the 3 days that it rains in the year, you're always in the rain because there's no roofs, so I'm just showing you the other side of the coin. But I'm very grateful. I never take it for granted.
Yeah. Beautiful weather. I'm going to kick this off because you're known as the Zen teacher.
Yes.
I have two questions for you.
Mhm.
One is, what is Zen? Can you describe that? I mean, I've heard that word so many times, and I love it. I love even just the word, the way it sounds. And what led you to write this book, The Zen Teacher, that kicked off everything in 2015?
Okay, now we're going to have a 4-hour podcast if I answer how I got here. The definition of Zen, as I see it, and I had to decide when I published this book if I was going to be a purist and go by a literal definition or a kind of traditional definition. And I said, hey, we're probably in a position where I can use it sort of in a secular kind of casual way, and people will know what I mean and they'll be okay with that. So my definition is something along the lines of Zen is when you notice your situation, your environment, your reality exactly as it is, without judgment or expectation. I have a teacher friend who he punctuates his conversations by saying, it is what it is, that old saying. And sometimes I just want to say to him, I don't think you realize how Zen you're being, when you say it is what it is, because, and this kind of transitions into your other question is, how did I get here? Around 2013, 14, I was facing massive burnout, and I had been teaching about, 20 years, something like that. I was like, I got 10 years to go. I didn't know how I was going to make it. Class sizes were exploding. I had, I think 40, we were up to 40 in every class at that point. And just, no supplies and, no funding and all of this kind of thing. And I'm like, how am I going to get through? And I just thought, well, I always was interested in Eastern philosophy, and I was a drama major where we talked about being in the moment and meditation and breathing exercises and relaxation and that kind of thing. And I kind of started blogging about that and about how I could use that to reduce my stress. And unfortunately, the short version is that blog, I was fortunate enough that it became a book, and it set me on a new path. And I'm so grateful because now I've been able to go do workshops really around the country, showing teachers, what I learned about how to reduce your stress and improve your self-care so you can avoid burnout. And I always thought in the beginning, you said I'm known as the Zen teacher. And I always thought in the beginning that was weird because I was like, I wasn't thinking, like when I came up with the concept of the Zen teacher, I was like, no, I'm not the Zen teacher. I was trying to figure out what a Zen teacher would look like, so the Zen teacher, not me, but it kind of stuck. And I just feel like I should be, wear some tights with a giant TZT on my shirt or something. But it took on a little bit of a life of its own, and I'm thrilled because it's a privilege. It's an absolute honor and privilege to help teachers in what I feel is the most noble and important profession on the face of the planet. I've been doing it for over 30 years. And the great thing about what I have been able to do with the Zen teacher for me is that I know now I'm now down to 2 or 3-ish years, and I know I'm going to make it through. And that's the best thing.
I have to admit, when I just saw the Zen teacher, I was expecting that you would show up, in our podcast in some yoga clothes. Like I think you'll have some dope like yoga pants, and you'd be, barefoot. And
only in special situations, Craig.
Okay. But I appreciate the fact that in what you're sharing about the Zen teacher, it's always the path and journey forward.
Absolutely.
And so what I guess I'm curious about now, based on the journey of you producing an incredible book that has inspired thousands upon thousands of people,
wow,
educators and whatnot, to now. What do you know now that you didn't know when you shared this wonderful book with us years ago? I'm blanking on the number of years, but what do you feel like now that you didn't know then as you published your the Zen teacher?
I love that question, and I'll try to be brief. The Zen teacher book came out in 2015, so 7 or 8 years depending on how you look at it. And as you said, and as even when we were talking before we went live, you were saying things along these lines, is that it's a path, it's a journey, and you're constantly refining and tweaking the message so that it's not only more apropos for you, but that it's more clear and precise for the people you're talking to. And yeah, like I said, I had to decide if I was going to be a purist. And what I really wanted to make sure that people knew is that, like I can get as woo-woo as the next person, but I wanted practical, actionable strategies that teachers could use right now and go in tomorrow, because it was a sort of a critical time for me, because sometimes a burnout sneaks up on you. Yes. And then you're like, I need to do something right now or it's all going to be over. So the short version of what I've learned since then, it really is a matter of refining the message. And one thing I talk, and we can talk more about this if you want, that I talk about is figuring out what I mean, but by what I call the 5 S's. And the 5 S's are stillness, silence, space, subtraction, and slowing down, and really synthesizing all of the ideas to kind of fit within those 5 S's. And what I always say is those 5 S's are always free and they're always available. Because other than buying my book, of course, I don't want people to have to spend money on anything, right? And so, it's so great that we can pluck from those 5 S's anytime we want. So really, because I think in the Zen Teacher, I wrote about most of those, and then there was a chapter on serenity, and I thought, well, that'll be one of the S's. But then it morphed into something else, and then the 5 S's are what I just listed for you. So I think just continuing to refine the message, finding those 5 S's was really a defining moment for me.
You mentioned about having some practical pieces that teachers could do. Do you mind giving an example, perhaps, for each of those 5 S's, or just pick a couple of them that people who are listening could say, oh, this is free, this is available, I can do this before, as you said, the burnout sneaks up on me and I'm just toast, really.
Right. Yeah, I'll share a couple, and then you can ask, if you want to hear more. One thing that comes to mind is in the idea, like I always say that stillness and silence go together. And I say that they are gifts we give ourselves, and nobody's going to do it for us. I always say in my workshops, nobody's going to come up to me and say, Danny, you look tired, you should take a nap. Nobody's going to, I have to choose. So it's intentionality. It's giving yourself permission to take care of yourself. But one of the things that I like to do is find times in my day for stillness and silence. And it can be as simple. And people, again, like Craig was saying, a lot of times people hear about these ideas and they're like, I got to shave my head and go meditate on the, in India on the mountain with the guru. And, no, it's not like that. If I meditate all the time, but I'm not on the cushion. I'm not wearing the yoga pants, like Craig said, but it's being at a red light in your car and just taking 3 deep breaths. It's I do some private tutoring now and again, and what I'll do is I will get to the client's neighborhood and park down the street and just spend 5 to 10 minutes going over what we're going to do, breathing, just listening to the birds, and those meditative times are super important to me. I know I freak out the neighborhood watch people a little bit, but what are you going to do? It's not my problem, right? So I just think it's really important to find those moments, and one of the other concepts I talk about is everybody has 5 minutes, right? We all say we're busy. We all say I can't do anything. We're in this go, go, go culture, but if even if we stop scrolling TikTok, we stop looking at Instagram for 5 minutes, we could do some breathing. We could listen to a song we like. We could take a walk around the block. I mean, stillness and silence are usually my go-tos to start with, and they're absolutely free.
I love that. Thank you. And I'm looking too at the slowing down piece.
Yes.
Just yesterday, I was working with a group in Delaware, and I put in a new slide that said, practice the pause.
Yes, I love that.
We're going so fast. And we know from an SEL point of view that when we have emotions that lead to feelings, if we don't pause, it turns into a behavior or an action right away. And so,
Oh, I love that. That's very true.
Moving us. And then we think of our students who, when I was teaching, it was, you need to teach bell to bell, and they're going. And, how can we help them recognize the slowing down, as you said, and to practice that pause, that we don't need to be going a million miles an hour. And let's collect our thoughts, take in the stillness. You have a part in your book, The Zen Teacher, that talks about being mindful in the area and taking in something that you hadn't noticed before, and listening and smelling what's around, and realizing that you can't ever be in the same place twice, because you're you.
Yes. You're different and the place is different, even if it's your living room. And there are things that you're ignoring or not noticing.
Like what is and what's capturing you. Thank you for those examples. I think they're really important.
Sure. Another thing you're reminding me of is there were a couple of years I was teaching freshmen again, and I love freshmen because they're so cute and they're just adorable. But I used to start with 10 minutes of silent reading because nobody reads anymore, right? And I wanted to build that muscle again, the endurance of just sitting there and reading. And when I would give them a survey about how's it going for you, you think I would have seen this coming, Krista, is they were like, yeah, the reading's fine. And I'm reading faster. I'm reading more. I read at home now. All wonderful to hear from me. But they said things like, it's just nice to have some quiet time before we start class. And it's the only time in my day when I'm still. And, and I thought, whoa, that was mind blowing to me, because I did not see that coming. And like I said, you would have thought that I would have, but I thought, what a great gift that is for them too. And of course, that's not going to be on any standardized test. It's not going to be part of any prescriptive curriculum. Nobody's going to understand the value of that, but it is huge and it is priceless.
Absolutely.
One of the things that I am buzzing about as I listen, to the way you create community, that there's an intentionality to the those serene moments of silence, and really empowering people to have permission to allow themselves to exist in that quiet and in that calm, especially with the world being so crazy and nutty.
Yes,
right.
Absolutely.
I have some curiosities with what you know now and where you are in your career. I'm sure that you are engaging with a number of educators and probably a number of students who are trying to figure out, how do I stay positive? How do I keep trying to be part of the light instead of succumbing to the dark? And you have this quote, I think you said, one of the great things about my path is that I'm a little positive voice in people's ears, right? And so I'm curious how you are continuing to instill that in some of the educators who you engage with, or some of the students. Like, how do you help people keep doing that when it feels like, look, I am tired of the inflation and eggs are high and housing is expensive and we got tornadoes. Like, how are you open and to inspire them?
Yeah. Well, we start with saying eggs are high and there are tornadoes and houses are expensive. And like I said earlier, that definition of Zen is recognizing what is. Okay. But then, as you said, moving forward, what do we do with that? Well, sometimes the biggest solutions are the most simple and obvious. And one of the places I go to when I hear a question like that, Craig, is the very, very basic fundamental concept of gratitude. Is and Krista kind of mentioned, using your senses, which is a big thing I talk about, is, use your senses to ground yourself when things are overwhelming and you like, I'm worried about next week and I'm worried about the fight I had with my spouse last night and, all of these other things. As Ram Dass used to say, be here now, right?
Yes.
Be here now.
Yes.
None of that's going on right here now. And then you use your senses to tune into that. and then look at, well, what do I have to be grateful for? And the magic of that is that there's always something to be grateful for. And I know, like sometimes in the workshops, I'll have people write down 5 things they're grateful for right now. And one workshop, I noticed I was running a little early. I needed to have them do something else. And I said, okay, you did 1 through 5, do 6 through 10, and they wrote down 6 through 10. And while they're writing that, I'm thinking, we could do this forever. There is always, and basic things like when I think of the engineering it took to get to a place where I can go, I'm sitting at my kitchen table, I can go across to my sink and flip a handle and water comes out. That's magic. Like, and I live in a place where, and I know some people don't, but I live in a place where that happens every time I want it to. And that humbles me. I'm like, I am so grateful for that. So basic stuff, but gratitude is where I would start with that. And I wrote a note while we were talking that simple does not mean easy.
Yes.
That a concept can be simple, but that does not mean easy. And that goes back to what we've been talking about the path, about practicing. I was just writing today about stumbling and how you're going to stumble on New Year's resolution, on a goal, on anything that playing guitar, anything that you want to get better at, you're going to stumble, and that's okay. That's part of the process. You can't beat yourself up. You can't have that internal, monologue narrative that's just, oh, I suck. I'm terrible. I'm not worth anything. I can't ever do this right. You got to, you have to stop that. But then the other part of your question was, how do I continue to be that positive voice? And I think it's, Krista mentioned it, you mentioned it a little bit, is just continuing to do the writing, to do the podcast, to say to people, it's okay to take care of yourself, first of all. And my goodness, when I started, teachers needed to hear that message. And they were not saying that to themselves. And I bought into the narrative when I started that, that meme that I used to love that now I hate, that teachers are not in it for the income, but for the outcome. Gaslighting anybody? I mean, I'm like, and I loved that meme. I thought, that's right. I'm so noble. Look at this. I'm doing it, and I can, just eat all the top ramen in the world. And, and I had top ramen for lunch today, so I'm not judging. But, I'm saying you just get to this point where you go, enough with that. Mm-hmm. And we are worthy of being taken care of. We're worthy of being paid as professionals. We're worthy of being treated as professionals, but it starts with us. And what I had to realize in 2015 is I looked around and I, had a wife and kids and a mortgage and, just all this stuff going on. And I said, I don't have the bandwidth right now to change the infrastructure of public education. Right. I'm going to let other people do that who have more going on, are able to do that. But what I knew I could change was myself on a daily basis. And so that's where I started. And then when it started working and people were responding to the blogs, I thought, okay, there's something here and people are responding. So I want to continue to help them. And so I just said, I want to be that little voice in your ear that says, taking care of yourself is okay. And it's sad that it was such a revolutionary concept, but it was.
And one of the things that I'm hearing as you talk, and it's this idea of setting boundaries as well. Yes. For care. And, during COVID, I remember reminding people too, because I learned from you how important it is to remind other people of that. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, I'm not trying to be flip and be like, oh, don't forget to take care of yourself. But honestly, if you don't do it, nobody's going to do it for you. And I've learned
Absolutely.
that, if you need to say, I have to step away for 5 minutes, or, tonight I'm not taking home the book bag, just tonight. Yes. Or I'm, one of the things I think about, you said 5 more minutes, you have 5 minutes, is mm-hmm. we get in the car and I turn on the radio. Well, mm-hmm. maybe I can spend 5 minutes just turning the radio off and just being.
Oh, absolutely. Like you said, I love music. And when I realized that I didn't have to have the radio on, that was an epiphany, whatever that is. But I realized I could just sit there in silence. Now, the danger of that is that, and this is why I think our culture is the way it is, because not that I know about everything, but, when you're quiet, you have to face what is. And sometimes it's not as pretty as we want it to be. And the constant movement, the constant white noise, the constant, motion and activities and filling in all the boxes on the calendar are to avoid dealing with what is. And so that's the risk. But once, imagine if you turn off all the distractions and you're quiet and you're still, and then you see some boogeyman going, okay, I don't like that, and you deal with it, then the peace that arises out of that is amazing.
A couple days ago, I was watching this short film with my niece, who's 9. It's called The Butterfly Circus. I know I've sent it to you. It's online on YouTube, 20 minutes long. And friends who are listening, go out and watch this. But there's a piece in there where he says, the greater the struggle, the more glorious the triumph. And just said,
yeah,
when we face things, it does allow us to come to the other side and not just kind of pushing everything away. Mm-hmm. And I feel that in knowing you and knowing how important writing is to you, first of all, mm-hmm. I love the fact that you teach ELA and you practice what you teach.
Yes.
Not practice what you preach.
Right.
Because there are not many people who do that. And mm-hmm. your newest book was Right Here and Now, talked through that process that mm-hmm. you go through. And I had a chance to read it before it was even published. And I'm like,
yes, you did.
I need this as somebody who's writing, but know that that can be a cathartic process. Mm-hmm. Was that the right word? Cathartic? Mm-hmm.
Of course.
I loved how you wove
Dr. Lay.
This is why it took so long, because I did done. But you talked about the different steps in the process and how it relates to our social emotional learning. Like I saw ECL all through that book.
Yes.
And putting your own stories that tracked your growing mm-hmm. in. And so I don't want to put words into your mouth, but I'm wondering, like, when you think about your own Zen practices, I assume that writing is part of that. Could you expand on that? And is there something else that you would add?
Yeah, I think there's a couple things, but yeah, I mean, writing for me is the Zen practice for me, because when we talk about Zen practice, that's that thing that's like a hobby, but it's more than a hobby. It's the thing that you lose track of time, you get in the flow, in the zone, as the athletes say, although I don't know anything about sports. It's that thing where when your friend calls and you're like, oh, I'm sorry, I was doing my thing, I didn't hear the phone ring. So writing is that for me. I write for about 20 or 30 minutes most days before school. I get there a little bit early, and it's just blissful. I'll turn on music, I'll turn on, get some coffee, and I just, that time of writing and getting lost in the words is amazing to me. I hear that working out works the same way, but I don't know about that. I'm sure. Okay. Craig's not happy with that answer. But no, I'm just teasing you, Craig. I've just never been an exerciser, but I'm teasing, but of course that, there is, they talk about the endorphins and getting into the flow and in the zone. And absolutely, I totally see that connection. But, just because like the memes we send to each other, I think humor is an amazing Zen practice, and it helps me. It's also a defense mechanism, and sometimes too much so, and I use it that way, but I use it to just endure. And I thank my father for that. He gave me classic rock and a sense of humor. And those are two things that have saved my life many, many times. And I will always be indebted to him for that. So I see, if you get writing, sense of humor and classic rock, I am set. Those things are gonna help me get through. So I think those would be what I think of when I think of Zen practices for me. Everybody's different.
I have a good question for you, since you talked about your Zen practices and those things that you have as part of your toolkit, if you will.
Oh, absolutely, toolkit.
So I'm curious, or I think we are curious. Even the wonderful listeners, our family would love to know. Like, what do you feel is your superpower?
Wow, you're asking hard questions and good questions. I love these questions. What is my superpower? at the risk of being repetitive, I would say writing and my sense of humor, and Beth's superpower is putting those two together. And when I can write something that makes, well, Chris is my Facebook friend. She knows this.
Oh my God.
If I can write something that makes people laugh, nothing's better for me. There's no better drug in the world to me than that. So I think if I can put writing and sense of humor together, that's my superpower.
I think you need to go in and print out your Facebook feed and put that into a book. I'm not, I mean,
well,
I really think you
thank
should,
you.
because I know when you come up in my feed, I am going to laugh, and I do. I'm like,
oh, that's wonderful. That's what I'm hoping. I love that's for me, and I don't want to, diss anybody else, but for me, I don't know that I have many other uses for Facebook, than to just maybe make somebody smile that day, or hopefully laugh. A funny meme, something, I put things that happened in my classroom. The thing that's funny about that, Krista, that I was telling somebody the other day, is that the things that I put on my Facebook that happened in the classroom are only the ones that I remember. Like a bazillion things happen every day that crack me up, but the ones that I remember and I think other people might find funny, that's what ends up on Facebook. So, that to me, the humor and the writing together is my superpower, and I just love it.
So I'm scrolling through your Facebook feed right now. I'm actually somebody else added a photo to your timeline.
Yes.
And it says, "Are you okay?" in quotes. And it says, "No, but I'm funny."
And what did I do? Can you see my comment there? What I put on that?
This is like my entire biography.
That's yeah. Are you okay? No, but I'm funny. That's like, I said that she knew. She sent that to me because she's like, "This is Danny," and I'm like, "Yeah, that's pretty much me." Because everybody has the struggles, right? Everybody has things that aren't going on. And to go back to what we were talking about earlier, I want to share one other thought is when you're still in silent and then you deal with what is, and then, like you said, the triumph is amazing. The other thing that's possible that's really important is to recognize, things are not perfect, and then just be there with it and not judge it and not beat yourself up about it. Just let it be. I'm thinking like particularly like if there's a bad breakup, like romantically or something like that, I say those are some of the like most painful things that I've ever experienced. But if I just sit there with it, it can hurt, and that's okay, because that's where I am right now. And what happens is people try so hard with the resistance of I want to stop hurting, that just creates more tension in this cycle, But if I just go, damn, that hurts, and I just sit with that, it's in some ways there's less tension and less resistance. So just a thought.
I'd like to also add to our listeners that you intersperse the really funny with also really powerful poetry.
On Facebook, yes.
Deep, and one of your posts was why is poetry necessary? Because it heals, and that's what you're talking about here. And so you have these two fabulous combinations of fun and hitting the soul, because there's so many of them I've bookmarked because
wow.
I don't know. I don't have the breadth of knowledge that you do in literature that I would find that on my own. But I do think, I know I get great quotes and things from Craig. And so I think he would definitely appreciate that too, that we're all poetry lovers and quote lovers, connecting with other people's humanity.
Well, yeah. And here's what's interesting about that is I think, a lot of people would say, "Oh, I don't like poetry," or "Oh, poetry's not my thing." Our culture does not value poetry, and that's what they would say. But since I've been posting those poems, what I've noticed is that people are really engaging with them and they're responding to them. And I'm just over in my corner going, kind of giggling because I'm like, "Told you," And then and I tell my students this all the time, and it's very true. And it definitely is part of the whole SEL experience. Is poetry has saved my life. I didn't realize it over the years. I've loved poetry since I was 8 or 9 years old, 7 years old. As soon as I discovered poetry, I said, "This is for me." Because years later, and Craig was saying, "Well, what have you taken away?" I've taken away the fact that poetry is a form of mindfulness, because you're capturing a moment, you're being precise, you're being clear, you're looking at things as they are, you're trying to capture that moment. All of those are very, very mindful activities. And if you look at my poetry, you will see lots of the titles are like places or indicators of what was going on at the time when I wrote that poem, because the poem is a little bit like journaling or a little bit of a diary entry, of just trying to capture that moment or that idea or that thought. But I want to thank you too for saying I strive. So it's nice to hear that somebody's picking up on that, for that combination of the funny and the profound. I think that's a fun balance to do. And I try to do it in the class with my students too.
It's powerful and it's working.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I love when I tell a joke in class and I see 3 people chuckle and everybody else just stares at me like, what are you talking about? But like I told one teacher, I said, some of them are just for me. I'm just entertaining myself in there too sometimes.
Where can our listeners get in contact with you, Dan?
There's a lot of different places. I think, Krista, you have all the social media information?
I do. Everything is linked. Okay. Go to the contacts, and your books are linked there as well.
Thank you very much. So I'll just say my website is thezenteacher.com. There are blog posts from all the way back in 2015 on. I kind of stopped blogging because I have a little podcast of my own called The Zen Professional Moment. So I'm going to mention that quickly here. And it, just because I'm busy, I had, and this is one of those things, the boundaries you were talking about, I had to realize I didn't have time for everything. Right. So I had to pick. So I picked, I want to really, focus on the podcast for now. Because that seems to be what everybody's doing and listening to. So I wanted to do that. But you can find all kinds of information on my website.
Awesome. Well, Danny, this has been an incredible conversation.
I had a great time.
I, cannot stop smiling. And I feel really calm. And maybe that's the aromatherapy. I have a little background. Well, we are really excited, and we are hopeful and optimistic that folks will definitely, check you out and connect with you. And until we do this again, SEL and EDU family, we want to make sure that you hold yourself and all those you hold dear very tight, and continue to do all the great things that keep you close and in the light. We love you. And we look forward to you joining us soon. Y'all be well.